Bibles today in the book of Exodus chapter 14. I like to begin reading in verse number 1. The King James Version Bible has this to say. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, verse number 2, Speak unto the children of Israel that they turn and encamp before Pi-hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea, over against Baal-Zevon. Before shall ye encamp by the sea. So they have just, the Egyptians, numbering in about 600,000 men, that including children, and other mixed multitudes that had joined the exodus from Egypt. Egypt represents the enemy of God, a false religion, the adversary of God's people. So they left Egypt and on their way to the promised land, and they were encamped. They were instructed to encamp in these places that were mentioned in verse number 2. So what the exciting thing about this was Pharaoh's heart was hardened. God allowed circumstance that he will show his glory. And so Pharaoh, according to the narrative in chapter 14, Pharaoh decided to gather his chariots and his horsemen and his army, 600 chosen chariots of the best, the special forces of Egypt, the enemy of God, are pursuing the people, the Israelites, the children of Jacob. According to some estimates, it's about 1 million people in their caravans and in their cattle and in their lives, with their livestock. What I mean is they were going through, and they were before them is nowhere to go back to. Ahead of them is the Red Sea. In between besides them are wilderness or mountains. And so just imagine the situation. They have nothing else to go except to move forward. And I'd like you to, as you read the narrative, I'd like you to focus that when the people of God saw the chariots, the armies of Egypt, the horsemen, the infantry, and all those armies of Egypt nearing or tailing them, look at what the attitude of the people who saw previously the wonders of God during the last 10 plagues before they left Egypt. I like to begin reading again in verse number 10. And when Pharaoh drew nigh, the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them, and they were sore afraid. And the children of Israel cried out unto the Lord. Verse number 11. And they said unto Moses, Because there were no graves in Egypt, hast thou taken us away to die in the wilderness? Wherefore hast thou dealt thus with us, to carry us forth out of Egypt? Verse number 12. Is not this the word that we did tell thee in Egypt, saying, Let us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians? For it had been better for us to serve the Egyptians than that we should die in the wilderness. Just imagine this man Moses and his brother Aaron are going through when they're confronted by grumbling, dissatisfied, afraid people who are a little bit showing the kinds of attitude or characteristics that Moses has to deal with. Moses is a humble and patient man, learned by the incubation of the 40 years in the wilderness experience before he was called by God. Dealing with this ungrateful, doubtful, and murmuring people, that's a very tough. As a pastor, I used to deal with some kind of irrational, argumentative people as well. But Moses is a very humble man. Moses was a clear-cut choice by God because of his development, willingness to obey God and follow God.